in September about 2000, I believe 2009. It was approximately 4 years ago. They stopped me at a police checkpoint in Bronx, New York on the Willis Avenue Bridge. It was about 2 a.m. in the morning. I was on my way fishing out to Medford, Long Island, and I came upon the checkpoint, and initially I didn't know what was going on. Traffic just stopped, and I sat and waited for about 45 minutes. Once traffic resumed, I came upon a cop who asked for my license, registration, and insurance. He explained to me why he was requesting the documents, and he told me to comply or be arrested. So I immediately reached over into my glove box. I got my valid license, registration, and insurance. And as I was handing my documents to the cop, I asked again, why was he requesting my information, which is my right. And he told me to pull my car over to the side. Once I pulled my car off to the side, he walked straight over to my vehicle, reached into my window, and tried to take my keys out of the ignition. And when he reached in and tried to remove my keys, I told him he didn't have a right to go into my vehicle, and I kind of nudged his hand back out the window, and he opened the door, grabbed me out, slammed me against my car, cuffed me, and put me in the back of the squad car, and they left me there. They left me there for about 2 hours. And even after I told them that I suffered from high blood pressure and I was having chest pains, they just left me in the back of the car with the windows rolled up. No one addressed my concerns. No one checked to see if I was okay. I was taunted while in the back of the car, subsequently arrested. Initially, they said it was for, I was DWI, then DUI. And they took me to the precinct. They put me in a holding cell with approximately about 9 or 10 other people in one cell. The room was like an 8x6, and it was about 8 to 10 people in there. And they just left me there. I asked to use the bathroom. They refused. Ultimately, my breathing and my chest pains got the better of me because I passed out in the cell. And that was the point where I guess they call EMS, because when I came to, I was being treated by EMS, and I was placed in the back of the ambulance, and I was taken to, I don't recall the name of the hospital. I think it was Lincoln in the Bronx, New York. And ultimately, they told me it was accelerated hypertension, that my pressure was through the roof, and that they were glad that they brought me in to be treated, because my pressure was so high, anything could have happened. And I was shackled. They removed my belt for some reason. They removed my shoes. So they brought me in shackled, legs, hands cuffed behind my back. I can only imagine how I looked. I believed it served a purpose. I believed that they needed me to look a certain way to justify what they were doing to me. I was cuffed to the gurney once they got me inside, and at that point I refused medical treatment. I told the physician, the ER physician, that I wanted a toxicology report done, that I was being arrested for DUI and DWI, and that if they didn't agree to do a toxicology, that I was going to refuse any medical treatment. Ultimately, they did, and I was released. When they released me from the hospital, well, I wasn't released from custody, I was released from the hospital. When they released me from the hospital, they had me walk out to the squad car on my own. I was still shackled. I was shackled cuffed with my hands behind my back, and leg shackles. And on the way out of the hospital, I had my family there. My parents were there. My wife was there. My daughter was there. and they wouldn't allow them to assist me at all. And apparently I was walking too slow for one of the officers because he told me he was due to get off soon, and he shoved me and I fell straight down on my face because I didn't have any way to brace myself. And hospital PD was there. They viewed everything. One of the hospital cops tried to help me up because the cops wouldn't help me up. They were taunting me and laughing and at the fact that I fell. And one of the hospital cops tried to assist me, and they told him that I was a prisoner, and that if he tried to offer me any kind of assistance, that he too would be arrested. At that point, the hospital cop told him, "Listen, I'm an officer also. What are you talking about arresting me? This guy needs assistance." And they told him, "Listen, stand back." They put their hands on their weapons and told him, "He's a prisoner, stand back, don't touch him." And they forced me to get up on my own. And it was causing so much of a commotion with everyone watching that the officers decided to no longer wait. They just grabbed me from my elbows, and they drugged me straight out of the hospital, across the concrete to their squad car. And again, I didn't have on shoes. I didn't have on a belt, so my pants were literally falling off my behind, and my feet were being dragged on the floor. And they got me to the squad car, and they just chucked me right on into the back and took me back to the precinct. Once we got back to the precinct, I came upon the officer that arrested me, and he asked, when he came in, he made a remark that had I kept my mouth shut, that I wouldn't be going through this. So essentially, he was putting the blame on me. And they placed me into the cell. By then, I had arranged for an attorney. And I guess they started slowly but surely to realize that I had means. That this wasn't going to go away. I told them while they were taunting me that it wouldn't end here, that I had arranged for an attorney, and that they would have to answer to what they did to me. And some time went by. They came into the cell and told me I was being released. And I told them, "No, you're going to have to give me something to say why you detained me." They said ultimately the story changed from DWI and DUI, which I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't even smoke cigarettes, I've never used drugs, I don't drink alcohol, not even recreationally. Ultimately, they said it was tinted windows, the reason why I was being detained and arrested. I did have tents. I had factory tents on the back of my vehicle. I own a 04 Chevy Tahoe, which they come from the dealer, tinted, the two back windows, which was of no consequence because the windows were rolled down when they pulled me over. I was sitting there with the ignition off at the time that they had the checkpoint, so all my windows were rolled down. But that's, irregardless of that fact, the factory tent's illegal in the state of New York. So that really didn't matter, and that was dismissed in traffic court. Ultimately, they released me. Before I left the precinct, I told the desk, I requested to speak to the desk sergeant. I told him I wanted to file a complaint for false arrest and brutality. And he told me that I had to leave the precinct and come back in to complete some kind of release process, which is bullcrap. So I agreed. I was calm as the situation would allow. I stepped outside of the precinct, attempted to come right back in, and that's when they sent officers out telling me that if I attempted to come back in, I would be rearrested. And so I persisted. I told them, "Well, then you're going to rearrest me. I'm coming back in. I'm filing a police complaint. And by you denying me this, you're actually committing a crime." And they told me that if I stepped foot back into the precinct, that I would be trespassing, which I questioned also. The building is owned by the city of New York, and I have a right, as per Mayor Bloomberg, to go into any precinct for any reason, to file any kind of complaints or reports that I needed to file as a citizen and resident of the state of New York, city of New York. And they refused. I brought all of this up to the officer. They refused. He told me, one of the officers in particular told me, this is my house, and if you step back in here, you're going to be arrested. So without trying to push past the officer so that he would say it was assault, I kind of just tried to maneuver my way back in, and he pulled out his cuffs, and I put out my hands, and I told him, okay, well, then rearrest me. And they wouldn't. More cops came over, they just shoved me out and told me, no, go somewhere else, you're not playing here. And ultimately, that's what I did. I was still experiencing chest pains. So immediately after leaving the hospital, leaving the precinct, I went right back to the hospital and sought medical treatment. I contacted my doctor. He treated me. So I never got a chance to file a CCRB complaint in the precinct, but I did file it I filed it online the very next day in detail. I also called Internal Affairs to complain, and they say they did an investigation, but I spoke to two of their officers once, and briefly, about 10 minutes, they came to my home. They sat in my home, actually, and basically antagonized me about the incident, and even questioned why was it that I didn't just submit to the process, the license, the checkpoint, and which I didn't understand what part that played in the investigation. When I allowed them to come into my home, I wanted to be sure that it was just to collect the facts so that they could do a thorough investigation, and that wasn't the case. I actually felt more brutalized with them sitting in my home than I did sitting in my vehicle, so I told them they had to leave. And they were kind of slow to respond. You know, they sat at my kitchen table and basically antagonized me and victimized me. And I told them again, listen, you're no longer welcome in my home. You have to leave. If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police from my town, because they traveled out of New York to New Jersey, which they didn't have any jurisdiction, and I brought to their attention. And I explained to them that even though I did allow them into my home, I am now telling them that they are no longer welcome, which is my right, and that they had to leave. And eventually they did leave. The investigation was inconclusive. Same with CCRB. I went down. I took all the evidence they requested. I made all of the statements. I went on my own time to this office they have downtown. I don't remember the address, but I know that it was an inconvenience, just simply where it was located. It's not something that's really accessible. I don't believe it's meant to be as accessible. It's not in the communities that are having the problems with the officers, so you have to go a great distance. And I went, I kept the appointments that they scheduled, I paid for my own parking, I fought through the traffic to go through the whole process, and they told me that was inconclusive also. And so the case was dismissed. And then afterwards there was a civil suit with Jeff Emden, and which was no vindication. You know, I was brutalized, and I work for a living. I've been with my current employer for 16 years. Everything I've acquired in my life, I've worked for. So the money meant nothing. I was looking for something to happen. I was looking for someone to say, you know what, you were victimized, you were brutalized. It was wrong what they did, and they're going to pay. They're going to be held accountable, and they weren't. As far as I know, there was nothing marked in their employee files or records or anything like that. It was just as though it never happened.